They say every day is for the thief, one day for the owner of the house. But ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, has reversed the role. It is now every day for the owner of the house. If you're involved in bribery, over-invoicing, or any shady deal, the day of reckoning has come. ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission, is watching you. If you're reported for any corrupt practice, you'll be investigated, prosecuted, and punished. Corruption is harmful to our nation. Join the campaign against it by reporting any corrupt practice to ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Let we join hands with ICPC, make them better.
Let's make Nigeria great again.
ICPC, they watch you.
No one's hand for corruption.
Break the chain of corruption now. Don't give, don't take. This message is brought to you by ICPC, the Anti-Corruption Commission.
Illicit financial flows, IFFs, can be defined as funds illegally earned, transferred, or utilized within a country and across international borders for various reasons, both legal and illegal. It could be money legally earned but moved or used wrongfully, or it could be illegal earned but moved legally. ICPC has been doing a lot in creating awareness on the heels of IFFs and have gone further to review the guidelines on negotiating and drafting of contracts and agreements by government parties to prevent corruption and illicit financial flows and to ensure sustainable development. Our focus today will be highlights of a one-day sensitization workshop on the revised guidelines which held recently in the ICPC headquarters. Welcome to another exciting edition of Corruption Must Go. My name is Murna Barnabas Atiahi. Before we bring you details, let us join Joy Aja as she brings us anti-corruption stories. Over to you, Joy.
Hello viewers, thank you for joining us. I am Joy Aja with Anti-Corruption Stories. The chairman of ICPC, Professor Bolaji Owasonye SAN, has tasked judicial institutions to make conscious decisions that would promote the fight against corruption in Nigeria. The ICPC boss also emphasized the importance of repositioning the judiciary as a fulcrum of the rule of law in order to eradicate corruption within the system. This formed the focal point of his contribution to discussions at a roundtable for heads of courts with the heads of government anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria, organized by the National Judicial Institute Abuja recently. Speaking at the event with the theme, Repositioning the Judiciary as a Fulcrum of the Rule of Law, the ICPC chairman raised new issues under money laundering and its immediate consequences.
The first thing is called the rating of your economy will dip. And when the rating of your economy dips, it's like if you are a lender, all of us here are lenders, and a few of us on this side are described as debtors. And we have very smart ideas to do things, and you are approached. You first of all wonder about that reputation and that status. So the first is reputational damage comes with economic consequences for national and international transactions, trade and investment to be precise. And what it means is that there will be higher transaction costs for Nigeria. Now, you may ask me, what has that got to do with us as judges? It's not our business, but it is your business. Because right now, the economy is being held up by borrowing. So when the next country is borrowing at 5%, you'll be borrowing at 15 or 20%. That's the first serious implication. The second serious implication is that companies and individuals in Nigeria will pay more for transactions that they necessarily have to do with the international community. So Nigerian companies, for example, that require any form of FX or foreign assistance to do their business will pay more. If they pay more, it means the products that they produce for us we have to pay more, whereas next door is cheaper. And if they have to pay more, it means they cannot even export, even if they have, in quote, competitive advantage, because they will not be able to compete. Don't forget about the power problem as well. And if they can't export as anticipated, then it means you don't have the FX that you want. If you don't have the FX that you want, there will be a balance of payment prices.
Earlier in his keynote address, the Honorable Chief Justice of Nigeria and Chairman, Board of Governors of the NJI, Honorable Justice Olukayode Ariwola, GCON, remarked that delay in adjudication of cases poses serious concern to the rule of law and the judiciary's reputation. He further explained that to address these issues, the judiciary must streamline and simplify court processes, invest in technology, enhance the capacity of judicial officers to enable them handle cases efficiently, and thereby promote speedy dispensation of justice. ICPC has called on the National Human Rights Commission to use its investigative powers to bring corrupt individuals and institutions to justice. This call was made by the ICPC Osun State Resident Anti-Corruption Commissioner, Mr. Demola Bakare, during a courtesy visit and sensitization lecture at the National Human Rights Commission in Osun State. Mr. Bakare stated that the courtesy visit was triggered by the need for increased collaboration at the state level to create awareness and foster public support in the fight against corruption. In her remarks, the Osun State Coordinator of Human Rights Commission, Mrs. Nneka Anigbo, acknowledged that corruption and human rights are closely associated with each other. She added that the collaboration between the two organizations can improve the integration of human rights into anti-corruption efforts and ensure that corruption is systematically reduced. That will be all on this segment. Corruption Must Go continues with Myrna. Please stay with us.
I am a Nigerian, a highly cultured race. My culture abhors corruption, and with my integrity, a new Nigeria is possible. I say no to corruption today to build a future for my children. Join me and imbibe the culture of integrity to build a Nigeria of our dreams.
This is a Cinema Beats production.
You're welcome back. Our focus is on the one-day sensitization workshop on the revised guidelines on negotiating and drafting of contracts and agreements by government parties to prevent corruption and illicit financial flows and ensure sustainable development. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, SAN, at the event called for a concerted effort in fighting corruption, saying that the fight should not be left to the federal government and its agencies alone, but that states should also get involved. The minister stated that the guidelines which ICPC spearheaded and developed was a necessity, as it would hopefully deter corruption in the negotiation and execution of government contracts. Take a listen.
Experience has, however, shown that law and order approach alone is not sustainable. Effective and efficiency require a nuanced combination of well-tailored mixture of governance, reform, prevention, and sanction. It is estimated Nigeria loses an average of $1.818 billion annually to illicit financial flows, more than 60% of which is due to commercial IFFs, which will be largely prevented with capable negotiation, drafting, transparency, and patriotic zeal. Consequently, the methodology adopted with this workshop is a preventive effort aimed at enlightening key stakeholders charged with the responsibility of negotiating contracts on behalf of the government on the content of revised guidelines. This will hopefully deter corruption in negotiations and execution of government contracts, which is part of the federal government's ministerial deliverables on improved guidelines for effective service delivery. The Federal Ministry of Justice is therefore committed to supporting initiatives undertaken by MDAs, which is aimed at engendering transparency, efficiency, and preventing corruption. Equally, at the ministerial level, the ministry has developed policy documents and specific mechanisms to ensure transparency and reduce incidents of bad judgment awards arising from poor drafting or drafting of federal government contracts with malafide intention against the country and its citizenry, particularly as it relates to contracts within the threshold of the Federal Executive Council. Drawing lessons from the notorious, and Prof mentioned this, case of FRN and P&ID, the government has taken measures aimed at ensuring that all contracts within council's thresholds are properly vetted, and we have discovered that a major source of drain on our national purse is the increasing utilization of litigation and arbitration, sometimes funded by litigation sharks, to foist contracts and agreements that were ab initio procured through bribery and corruption on Nigeria.
Thank you for staying with us. ICPC Chairman Professor Bolaji Owasonye, SAN, in his welcome address, noted that the lack of provisions for periodic review of long-term contracts, grant of licenses and waivers were among some of the ways contracts are used to fleece the nations through capital flight and other forms of illicit financial flows. He further stressed that the need for the guidelines arose from the fact that the seat of arbitration and choice of laws have often worked against the nation. Let us hear him.
Any agreement or transaction that takes resources from a country but gives little or nothing in return, or takes back in subtle ways what is pretended to be given, cannot be said to be a pro-development agreement. Nigeria, like many African countries, loses huge amounts of resources to illicit financial flows that originate mainly from three sources, namely commercial illicit financial flows symbolized by tax evasion, trade misinvoicing, and especially abusive transfer pricing, criminal activities, and then corruption, bribery and corruption of public officials in particular. To make matters worse, poorly negotiated agreements often end up in litigation, either in regular courts, but mostly by international arbitration with negative outcomes against the country. While the humongous compensations and awards in scarce foreign currency tend to catch the attention of the public, invisible costs like the cost of the litigation itself, the cost of endless travels, the payments to legal officers and professionals are hardly mentioned, but they also contribute to the economic agony that results from poorly negotiated agreements. The Thabo Mbeki panel on illicit financial flows from Africa found that commercial IFFs arise from business-related activities such as abusive transfer pricing, trade mispricing, misinvoicing of services and intangibles, and using unequal contracts for purposes of tax evasion, aggressive tax avoidance, and illegal export of foreign exchange. Commercial IFFs almost double the losses from other types of IFFs combined. While corruption accounts for only 3.5%
net loss to the global economy. Criminal activities account for 35.5%, while losses to commercial IFFs is about 60%. The principal vehicle for commercial IFFs in Nigeria include contracts that are negotiated with government entities or by private entities that include clauses that defeat government expectation for tax revenue and also hinder the achievement of government economic development objectives. This situation warrants the need for guidelines for negotiators to be better prepared and to know what to do in preparation for and during negotiation of contracts and agreements for their ministries, departments, agencies on behalf of government, including understanding what are post-negotiation and post-contract responsibilities. Since negotiation is so important, it is expected that a country will negotiate with its best team and equip them with guidelines, the rules of the game, the do's and the don'ts.
Also at the event, the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, in a paper titled Avoiding Tax Defaults and Capital Flights in Commercial Agreements, suggested the way forward to addressing some of the issues encouraging capital flights in commercial agreements. He recommended the standardization of approach using templates and approved checklists constantly reviewed and updated.
My focus is on avoiding tax defaults and capital flights in commercial arrangements. And I want to start by giving just the context of where we are as a country. So the work that have been asked to lead for our country on fiscal policy and tax reform, broadly as given to us by Mr. President, covers three aspects. One of it is revenue transformation, one of it is fiscal governance, and one of it is growth and competitiveness facilitation. Now, we are at a point today where you can easily say that Nigeria has a revenue crisis, and you will be right. If you don't like it that way and you say we have a debt problem, you will not be far from the truth. Or if you also say that the quality of spending is questionable, you will not be wrong. Now, when you have the combination of these three very important areas of our economy, then it calls for a lot of concerns. So our revenue to GDP ratio as at the end of 2021 stands at about 10.86%, and that's easily one of the lowest in the world. Our spending, of course, not surprisingly so, it's only just about 13% to GDP. So what this means is, even without corruption, we will still struggle as a country. And you can only then imagine what it means if you add corruption to it. We don't have a lot of money. The little we have, we're not the most efficient in how we spend them. Sometimes this spending is not just about whether the money has been stolen, which does happen. It's also about whether you have the right priorities. So what is the point building an airport in a state where you do not have roads from the farm to the market, where you do not have primary schools with covered roof, no seats, you don't have health centers for your people? Even when you don't have the wrong priority, what if the projects are delayed? And we've seen that all over the place. We've seen roads being constructed for more than 10 years. You know, the lawyers who say that justice delayed is justice denied. And I'll say I agree. It also means that value or benefit delayed is value or benefit denied. I should not have to lose my job because I'm stuck in traffic for 4 hours every day just because we're fixing the road. And that takes 10 years. So quality of spending is also important. Our debt to GDP ratio has increased significantly over the past few years. It's currently standing at over 40% to GDP ratio. But that's not the end of that story. The more concerning aspect of that story is that the cost of servicing the debt is now in the region of 96%. So at the federal government level, just imagine that for a moment. 96 kobo of every 1 naira that we earn, we use to service debt, not that we are paying back, just to service the debt. If we do nothing about this, the outcome is predictable, and that is not what we want for our country. So we have to do something and do it urgently.
The first plenary session of the day featured a robust discussion by a panel moderated by Barrister Odofia Abia, Director System Study and Review Department of ICPC. The panel had Professor Dayo Ayoade, MNI, who discussed negotiating oil and gas agreement, while Professor Peter Taka Akpa, SAN, discussed negotiating solid minerals agreements. The second plenary session covered negotiations in trade and investment sector and environment standards contracts. The team had Mr. Adedayo Kayode, Director in charge of Proceeds of Crime, Recovery and Management Department in ICPC, as the moderator, while Professor Jonathan Aremu and Dr. Jare Adejuwon served as panelists. They brought their experiences and expertise to bear on the subject matter. It is hoped that the efforts and achievements of ICPC in the area of curbing IFFs, particularly the use of these revised guidelines, will go a long way to help Nigeria to achieve the sustainable development goals. That is the much we can take on this week's edition of the program. Remember to follow us on social media using the handles showing on your screen. You can also call us on our toll-free number 0800 call ICPC. Thank you for watching. Join us again same time next week for another edition of the program. Bye for now.